Okay. Then, anyway, we can start the second session of the Industry Forum. Here we have also 4 papers. And the first paper is titled Process Mining Applied to Process Redesign in a Domestic Navigation Business Company. And it will be presented by Wesley Santos. Okay, you have 10 minutes, and after the presentation, we will open a 4-minute question answering phase. Okay?
Okay.
Then, when you want.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this DPM 2020 Industry Forum paper presentation. My name is Wesley Santos, and I'm going to present a case study of the adoption of process mining in Login Logistics Intermodal, a domestic navigation business company in Brazil. The company followed the process mining project methodology and used open source process mining software and libraries such as Prom and Promore and Bupar. Here is the outline of this presentation. We're going to start with the description of the domain problem and the challenge to solve. Then we're going to present the solution following the process mining project methodology. And last but not least, the benefits and lessons learned from this application of process mining. Login is a Brazilian company that offers full door-to-door logistics solutions, planning, management, and operation for cargo movement by means of domestic navigation. The domestic navigation is a promising model in Brazil, and Login invested more than $200 million in this model. The company has more than 1,500 customers. The process invoice payment request by self-suppliers emerged as a demand from the operational cost management area in 2017. This process was considered poorly structured and with gaps in the interactions between all the areas involved. Some of the problems were lost emails in the inbox of the process actors and lack of process orchestration. The financial department started a project to implement this process on a business process management system aiming to digitalize the process. They are involved by procurement, operational cost management, and information technology. The initial scope was to create a portal through which the suppliers could start and follow the payment process. However, the process was not properly documented, and some typical implementation problems showed up. Nobody interviewed end-to-end process properly, knowledge silos in each area, weak integration with other systems related to the process, different types of cases addressed the same way, and low efficiency. When demands for implementation of new services were requested, it was necessary to go over the process and associated to the process from the start. The challenge faced was to understand the process and how the data changes during its evolution along time to elicit the necessary requirements to implement a new service. The application of process mining seemed to be an alternative to understand the SE situation and data control behavior, as well as to help conducting more accurate interviews with interview participants and validate hypotheses faster. We followed the process mining project methodology, and the methodology comprised 60 stages with several different input and output objects of the types goal, related, data, and models. The first stage is planning, with the goal to set up the project and to determine the initial situation. In your case, the initial goal was to understand the process because the documentation did not correspond to the way the process was actually running, and then improve it by adding the new service request. The team was composed by 1 process analyst, 3 IT members, and 3 business experts. In the second stage, named extraction, we did a data assessment. We observed that part of the data was missing due to non-mandatory fields in the DPMS, and many variants were addressed together. The fifth stage is about data processing. We used filters on the log to remove open cases, filter on for the last version of the process, and included the processing time attribute for each case. They, as this model, were converted to a Petri-net for use with specific plugins. The mining, analysis, and evaluation were performed in 3 iterations. In the first iteration, the inductive visual mining available on APROM and PROM were used to see the process behavior and get some insight. With the discovered process, we did quick interviews with the process partners. As a result of these interviews, we created another reference model to be used for conformity analysis. We realized that many activities in the process take place outside systems. In the second iteration, we used decision mining for detecting data dependencies that might affect the routing of a case. We discovered that container services follow a particular flow with 2 approvals. And additionally, we could also discover that some suppliers fit into a group where all requests were initially rejected, and therefore they had to correct the errors in the request. In the last interaction, we started applying conformity checking to analyze how the process cases behaved. We made an analysis of precedence relations between activities of the process with two paths. We used this diagram to discover the flows between activities, looking at absolute frequency. After all the analysis and evaluations, a document suggesting improvements was prepared to provide subsidies to the design of the process. In addition to the 2 new services that would be added to address the initial demand, some opportunities for improvement were obtained with the use of process mining. Our team could reach to a fast and objective analysis of the process, avoiding long and tiring interviews or workshops that can take days until full understanding to analyze requirements for new features in a process. And it was possible to start auditing the process from a more transparent and complete perspective, looking at the digitalized parts of the process and the results that perform the activities. Process mining enables the monitoring of integrations between systems related to process, providing the possibility of monitoring more complex KPIs. And it also made it possible to visualize activities where integrations would not be possible due to technological limitations of these parties, in our case, some suppliers. However, the orchestration of activities with DPMS and the use of robotic process automation appears as a possibility not to only automation the activity, but also keep it visible in logs for future analysis via process mining. The process mining approach identifies the lack of integration at some parts of the process, and moreover, based on the insights provided visually by outcomes, we could infer how to solve the problem. The process analyzed in this case study is crucial to the domestic navigation, but since the success provided by the suppliers could not be neglected, some delays of works could mean big losses to the company. The adoption of the process mining in this context impacted not only the identification of improvements, but also the reorganization of the whole macro process. Thus, variance identification was valuable for the reorganization of sub-process. Moreover, we can infer some strategic implications of process mining usage in our case. People cannot prevent from registering manual activities, and data collected from suppliers need to be checked and integrated within systems. In this sense, conformity checking is useful for the identification of activities performed out of the information system. It's important to notice that all the findings about the process and related systems came not only through the data, but also through the interviews with participants. We also have some considerations about the methods adopted. Following a systematic approach was very beneficial since the team could organize the work, and it was possible to demonstrate the value add much easier step by step. However, in practice, besides the mining and analysis phase, which is planned through iterations, with the results of each iteration stimulating the next one, it would be important to provide feedback also to the other phase. For example, in your case, with the discovery of results in the activities, we are able to better compose the team and gain more valuable insights for the process actors. Finally, we needed a distinguished approach for unstructured versus unstructured process. For example, specific guidelines to deal with different types of findings, and moreover, templates to represent findings and suggestions that could be implemented in the improvement stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any question? I think we have no any raised hand. Okay, I have a question. You have two models, the as-is model and the discovered model, right?
Right.
Then, what was the difference between them?
Some activities in the S model was not reflected in the discovered model. Some of the activities were like messages, sent messages from the BPMS that and time events were not sending some was not triggered. That was some of the difference that we could find in the discovered model that was not present in the as-is model.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Any other question? Okay, thank you. Then we move to the next presentation. The title of the presentation is Means for Achieving Process Modeling Success. Insights from a large Australian bank. And it would be presented by Elizabeth Holmes.
Hello, everyone. I am Lisa Holmes, and I'm a member of Commonwealth Bank's Enterprise Architecture team. And together with the co-authors, John Meredith, ex-Commonwealth Bank General Manager for Process Management and Improvement, and Wasana Bandara from Queensland University of Technology BPM Research Group, we present to you our paper focusing on the means for achieving process modelling success, insights from a large Australian bank. And there's no prizes for guessing. The bank is the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and from here on in, I'm going to call it CBA for short. Okay, so on the agenda today, I will give you some context on CBA's BPM journey as it relates to successful process modelling, and also provide the intent of our paper. Also, as promised in the pre-recorded video, for anyone who watched it, we will spend the majority of the time in this session on the lessons learned, and these being top management support, tools and methodology, as well as stakeholder engagement. And if I don't talk too much and run over, there will be some time at the end for a couple of questions. Okay, so let's start with the BPM journey for CBA. So CBA has a very long history of being process oriented, but the branding of these activities has been regularly refreshed to link it to the latest corporate strategy and to reinvigorate energy and make the activity relevant to the current day. We've had about 8 different terms for it. I think we've had management by process, process excellence, productivity, Lean Six Sigma, continuous improvement, agile, you name a few, but really it was a shifting regulatory landscape with increasing expectations from both customers and from fintech competitors in our space that saw a really perfect opportunity 5 years ago or so to establish a chief process office, as well as an organization underneath the chief process officer to support a central capability for process management and improvement across the group, including appropriate tooling to support the generation of valuable, actionable insights, mitigating risk, improving customer experience, and also opportunities to simplify our technology landscape. The intent of our paper today is to share with you the key lessons that we've learnt as they relate to successful process modelling, which will in turn hopefully make your own process modelling journeys just that little bit easier. So first one, top management support. First of all, you need to offer a solution to solve a strategic goal, a really important strategic goal. At CBA, when the Chief Process Office was proposed, the regulatory and competitive landscape was intensifying. So the prospect of having a team that could help senior leaders make it safe and easy to transform, which was our customer value proposition, was, you know, and to also meet those ever increasing expectations, was really compelling and relevant. Understanding end-to-end processes where we're exposed to risk, where we have controls in place, and what technology supports our end-to-end processes were all important, but not really easily accessible. We also offered to process model the highest impact processes across the bank, and a way to provide and manage process performance, so the senior leaders could really take the right action. Second thing is, I suggest that metricate what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. So obviously project management is key, but what you deliver and choosing the right metrics to focus on is really important. And it's really not something that we did well enough early on. We didn't do enough discovery. We thought the data was going to be readily available, but we very quickly found out that the data we needed in our dashboards to show process performance across various attributes was not as easy to get hold of as we thought it would be. So these performance dashboards took longer than expected. The change management to embed these new metrics and the use of those dashboards was also probably underestimated. So my recommendation here is pick one data type and produce that. Understand the data availability before you start, and don't overpromise. Don't say that you're going to do lots of different data elements, even if you potentially theoretically could, because if you overpromise, you could potentially underdeliver. I suppose the last thing in that is top management support is I wanted to call out the real importance of frequent communication on your progress throughout the various channels. You put up a business case to get your funding for what you're setting up, but executives and senior leaders move onwards and upwards and out of the organization and get replaced. So reminding that current leadership team of the day of the value of the work that you're doing, why you're doing it, what a great investment choice they made, should not be undervalued or avoided, or you could lose that all important investment support for your team and also stakeholder engagement. So lesson number 2 around tools and methodology. So first thing to learn about tools and methodology is, yes, you do need a modeling tool, a process modeling tool, preferably one that is 3-dimensional and can aggregate metadata, the likes of which are shown in this picture on this slide. PowerPoint and Visio 2-dimensional tools are easy to use, good communication tools, but they don't have the modeling insights capability you're going to need to be able to deliver strategic insights for senior leaders. But be warned, don't make all of your insights about the tool. It's not the tool that produces the insights, it's the people that use the tool and they know how to use it to get what you need. Focus on building end user capability and advocacy by demonstrating value through the insights that you've delivered through that modeling process. If you focus too much on the tool itself, you could potentially become a solution that is looking for a problem, and you're also undervaluing the capability that the team of process specialists that you have under your organization, the value that they bring to the table in understanding the process and the insights. Before I talk about what not to do with process modeling standards, I wanted to call out to you now that we have provided our standards and methodology handbook in the abundant ancillary material, which there is a link to in our paper. We hope these resources will provide you a really good foundation of what you could include, and you can adapt them to your needs of your organization. Make sure though that you balance the rules and standards that you impose that are suitable for the capability of your end users. Too much, too soon, and your end users will be put off using the tool and doing process modeling, because the whole process just becomes too hard and it's too complicated. You can always add additional governance once you have a good base of users. So I'd recommend not over governing too early. Lastly, on methodology, if you want process modeling to become part of the DNA of your organization, then you cannot be an island. You have to look for opportunities to integrate process modeling into other existing group frameworks. An example would be data management. In order to have a data management policy, you understand data as it flows through technology, through your process, gets touched by many different people in the organization. You must try and incorporate process modeling as a precursor to even understanding your data management in your organization. The other thing, another framework which is popular is risk and controls. If you've got the right process controls, you can manage your risks. So look at the risk frameworks and really build process modeling and that capability into the organization and those capabilities, because at the end of the day, you'll have a better chance of that practice sticking around long term if it's connected to something else. It just makes it harder to pull out. And then the third lesson learnt is around stakeholder engagement. And similar to top management support, you really need to help your stakeholders solve what for them is a burning platform or an urgent problem. You've really got to make their lives easier. And you need to pick something that you know will help them and that you know you can deliver. And I wanted to put a visual representation of one of the assets that we delivered here. And this was an example. It's a process view of risk. So I wanted to explain, at the top we've got the process value chain itself, and with just doing the process modeling and understanding and doing those workshops to understand the process, understand where the risks are occurred, where they occur, and where they are sort of met with controls, understanding each step of that process, and understanding then connecting that information to the source of risk information and control information you've got probably in another data system, which is always the case. They're all in separate things. Connecting that together and then making the information visual. People understand their process. They don't always understand technology or risk. And so making a simple summary page here, and then there's obviously, and we use Tableau for this, but there's other pages where you can deep dive and, you know, interact with each of these little donuts here describing the health of a fictional process, to say, okay, what's, you know, you've got a process, you've got some risks, you've got some controls, maybe some open issues that you're trying to fix. And really it shows you an example here very easily. If you've got control effectiveness, which is showing green, it's showing everything's healthy. Very clearly, if you see you've got open issues, it's sort of saying to you, it's the watermelon effect. You've got very green on the outside, red on the inside. If you've got issues, you can then see that your controls, they say they're effective, but really you need to deep dive into that. And there's other metrics you can put in there, but that's just one example I wanted to go through. The other thing is, once you have found that priority area, you need to keep your scope tight and really set engagement expectations. You have to get the commitment of those stakeholders and their subject matter experts to be able to help you help them. If they start to disengage, they reschedule workshops, it's not seen as a priority, then as hard as it is, you really need to go back to that executive stakeholder and have a conversation with them and get their recommitment to this deliverable. I know that's hard, but otherwise you're undervaluing your own time. Also, I would say that the last thing that you need to do, obviously keeping scope tight, I'd say pick one metric, pick one data source, if it's risk or if it's technology, whatever is most relevant, but really do that discovery so that you know you can deliver that data and really do it really well. then I suppose the last thing is, once you've finished with that process, you've helped that stakeholder, delivered what you said you would deliver, the best thing to do is to obtain feedback on the way that you conducted the whole process. Where could it be improved? Integrate that feedback, but then also use that example as a showcase and show off what it is that you have solved that senior leader to do. But obviously the message sender is best if it comes from the senior leader themselves. So find opportunities to make them look good and have them sell your message of the value that you are delivering. And it's that sort of message that really builds trust and also builds demand for your services. And really, I'd say keep your stories and communication of the value you're adding available through multiple comms channels. And I would say that you'd be, doing well to keep the stakeholder engagement. I'd say that's all we have time for today. Wasana, John, and I would love to chat to you at the coffee session tomorrow if you're available. And I'd like to open now for questions if there's time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Is there any question? Okay, I have a question about the how to generalize this lesson learned. That is, this was applied in a bank in a banking case, but these lessons could be generalized to other domains or to other cases?
I would say absolutely.
Would you like?
And actually, Wasana, who has also is very across all of the literature, these critical success factors for modeling have been sort of modeled and shown in also through various papers. Wasana, are you able to enlighten us a little bit more on the... Yeah.
Certainly, thank you for that. So there's lots of papers out there that talks about what should be done, but there's a gap in the current body of knowledge that's publicly available, which explains how things are done. And what this case study offers is this common knowledge. Yes, it's not new to say that we need top management support or we need to address stakeholder needs, but this case study shows exactly a very rich encounter of how things are done. And these lessons can certainly be applied in other organizations. We've started using these in some of our master courses where other companies are learning these experiences, and especially utilizing the ancillary material as a start off point. So when they develop their methodologies and templates and structures and think about the communication they would like to sell the concept of process modeling upstream and downstream, they use these already, actively taking the insights from rich case studies of this sort.
Okay, thank you. We have another question in the tab of question answering, but I think is very similar to this. What would you have done different if you had to set up BPM in the bank all over again?
I would say that I would certainly keep the original intent. The business case was the same. I would definitely do that. But really what I've said here, so I would have continued to get the top management support by continued engagement with them. So we needed to do more communication and more frequently. I would have not gone across lots of different data attributes. I would have kept the scope tight on the projects that we were doing, and I would have acted on disengagement because it wasn't necessarily always the priority for everyone to do that piece of work, and we may not have chosen the right area to work on. So really the ideas that we've listed here are what we would have done differently.
Okay, thank you. I remember that the attendees can write his questions in the question answering tab or raising the hand in Zoom. Okay. Okay, thank you. Then the next presentation is titled Flexibility, Adherence and Guidance for Regulated Process with Case Management. And the presenter is Johannes Tenster.
Thank you. Thank you also for the introduction. I'm CEO at Pertunity GmbH and postdoc at the Friedrich-Alexander University Erlangen-Nuremberg. And together with Michelle Hormish, I'm very happy to present to you the paper Flexibility, Adherence and Guidance for Regulated Process with Case Management. And first of all, I'll introduce the challenge in adaptive case management, outline our solution approach at Pertunity, then the benefits and lessons we learned, and finally outline the next steps. So, Pertunity is a startup in the realm of adaptive case management, and we currently transform it to be used as a platform for implementing quality management systems in regulated domains. There you have to adhere to laws, norms, and other regulation, but in most domains you also need flexibility for knowledge work. For now, we focus on medical quality management, where we have many norms and many country and region-specific laws. For example, the Medical Device Directive and regulation, as well as the German Medizinproduktegesetz, so the German medical device law. Engineering processes are the prototype of knowledge work, and you cannot omit transparency regardless of whether your current activities are structured or ad hoc. Often aspects of those processes are structured, while the overall process can remain flexible. Especially here, scattered process data is expensive, as each system you introduce in such a quality management system has to be evaluated on its own, for example, in regard to backup strategy, security, and so on. You can see similar characteristics in automotive, aviation, insurance, finance, and many others. So, for example, in this process, you see the software development and risk management activities involved in order to update an already existing medical device product. So we have a product and do lots of software development afterwards. If you look close into it, you see that the risk analysis, assessment of total risk, and risk management reporting are highly structured, both in this process as well as in the documentation, while the whole process also looks very structured. If you look more closer into it, you see the software development activities that are merely an abstract task in this model, while most of the work that's actually being done for this process is performed outside of the process management system, which, at least in my opinion, is a very bad idea. So this process and many others consists of both structured and flexible parts, and we need to consider this within quality management, but also as a BPM vendor in the BPM system as well. So what do you need to do if you want to support such processes? If you look into the spectrum of process support systems by Svensson, for example, on the right side, you see groupware and social business software on the very flexible side and process-driven applications on the predictable and repeatable side. But for this type of process, you need both. In adaptive case management, you also can combine this. These systems have to be configurable and applicable to multiple domains. And many have to have support for unstructured processes, at least in Pertunity we do. There's typically also a strong focus on documents and unstructured data in this type of system. There's no clear definition yet about what adaptive case management actually is, or rather every researcher and every vendor has their own definition for that and is trying to sell it this way. So you can expect everything between a strong focus on modeling, which in my opinion wouldn't be that much of adaptive case management, or a strong focus on groupware. And since it's not that clear, we also do both. So Pertunity is an adaptive case management system and was founded as an academic spin-off out of my PhD thesis. We focus on structured and ad hoc activities. We provide activity streams for transparency and traceability, and now we included sub-process modeling as well. The ultimate goal of all of this is to have one system of record for all parts of the process that today, at least, are typically scattered across many systems. So on the left side, you see an example of that. We have an activity stream over multiple cases, and on the right side, you see a hierarchy of cases, which would be more or less project management. On the right bottom side, you see a documentation of a single task connected off to the other artifacts that are related to this one. We do social adaptive case management by providing activity streams. Those are known from social software like LinkedIn or Facebook, where you see what all your peers can do. And we provide them for traceability and coordination on different granularities. Artifacts are stored within the same system, which allows for explicitly linking them. All artifacts have nodes. You can add arbitrary attributes via entity attribute value approach, and each artifact also has its own activity stream, which would be those different granularities I talked about. We provide predefined artifact types that are known from groupware, for example, contexts, tasks, events, documents, and correspondence, but also arbitrary data objects where you can also add attributes as you wish via EIB. The distinction we apply enables strong integration with mobile devices and also file synchronization. So the overall goal is that teams decide their workflow themselves, and the BPM system allows what they want to do. We apply sub-process modeling because in medical quality management and other domains, we made the observation that neither complete flexibility nor complete process models are actually a good idea. And in the case of knowledge work and regulation, which you have there, aspects are often known a priori, and knowledge workers want to decide which type of tasks they want to add to their workflow, which aspects they can skip here or perform multiple times, or which variant you pick, for example, if you support different regions or different severity of bugs or so on. In this domain, transparency is often way more important than automation, because documentation is what actually takes time here. So the basic idea that we apply is that you have cases that stay completely flexible, and you import structure as needed, those sub-processes. You perform both your ad hoc and structured activities within the same context here. So this is how it looks like. On the left side, you first of all see many ad hoc artifacts, so context, tasks, and so on. And on the left list, you see 5 different sub-process instances of different types with their own state. And on the right side, you see one instance that is currently running. This type of process, which you here see, is rarely automated. This is the bureaucracy needed to release a new medical device product where you have performed all the work prior to that and just need to update your files and notify your authorities or notified body. The stakeholders performing these processes primarily want to see what they did, when they did it, what they need to document, and what the current status is. So more or less, they want to be guided through regulation instead of automation, since this process will rarely be performed. So for sub-process modeling, the idea is that you model single aspects of your overall process, and you have a shared context with the parent case. So the same attributes, the same name, and so on. And all of those sub-process instances are loosely isolated. They each have their own state, they have their own variable scope, but they can communicate via the shared case scope. You can perform multiple instances per case, but each sub-process instance has one parent case. This way, you don't really need a single notation for all your processes. So if you have high variability, you may apply DCR graphs or CMMN. We are currently working on DCR graphs here. And if you have an auditor that only knows BPMN, or if you have a strong focus on automation, then you might want to use BPMN for that. The basic idea for deviations is that since this is performed within the same context, you provide automation in the sub-process models and instances, and can deviate transparently from it because those processes share the same activity stream with the parent case. We perform this stuff. Activity streams are always visible within the parent case. So if you just change a task, add an artifact, change an artifact, or so on, you see both. So for hierarchic data management or hierarchy cases, we apply way similar to that of project management, where you often have task level hierarchies or hierarchically managed tasks, and also for model processes, for example, sub-processes, you also know. So the problem for us here is, if this is flexible and automated, how do you share information across levels? And for that, we found the right matrix, the matrix on the right side. The names aren't that good, since if you have instance level inheritance, it doesn't really make up as inheritance, but you know what I mean by that. But what's important in adaptive case management is that you have differences on where you decide how those dependencies are managed and which direction this goes. So here we have 4. For master data and data objects, we allow arbitrary attributes. You can add all you want to do here, and you can also create your own data schemata for those data objects, so they share a common structure if you want. Also, the dependencies are currently for master data inheritance and imports, and for tasks, for example, that you can aggregate all the subtasks you have on child cases in your parent case. So what are the benefits of that approach? This way we can facilitate one system of record. It still depends on the user, so we have to provide all the features the user wants that he actually uses it as such. But if you have it, you have all your relevant case and process data at one place, or at least reference at one place. We provide many group artifacts to support especially knowledge-intensive processes, and if you only have one system to consider here, you can drastically reduce your complexity of backup strategies, for example. We provide activity streams on different granularities. Those are both important for audit trails if you're a certified company, or for coordination within your team. And we provide flexible BPM. So all the tasks you perform that are not automated are still implicitly documented, since you said that you performed this one activity and it's in your event log. You can combine regulated processes where your models are structured with complete project management with a Kanban board, for example. And also that way you can transparently deviate from process models which might not be that applicable in a certain context here. We also want to guide through regulation. So process management is not all about automation, but also that stakeholders know what they need to do. And this mini automation in this regard can also facilitate that. The lessons we learned is that you should integrate your data and processes in one place, which is typically not this way today in knowledge work. Process artifacts are scattered across many systems. And what we also saw is that artifacts are typically more tightly coupled than the systems, for example, the norms and documents involved in a single task. The requirements of adaptive case management users vary both between companies, between users, but also over time as you learn more about BPM. So systems need to be configurable and adaptable to new situations. And what we also want to facilitate, and what we saw, is that BPM competencies in organizational development need to be facilitated, which we try to do by allowing stakeholders to perform small automation, which can be get more sophisticated over time. And at the beginning, it doesn't need to, because we can transparently deviate or flexibly do what you haven't yet modeled. So we want to facilitate cross-functional communication and implicit learning for organizational change. So the next steps, and I'm nearly finished, are that we want to provide a reference model for medical quality management. In this area, we saw that each company has to build a quality management system from scratch, which we know from ITIL that it can be performed in a better way. And also, if you do automation or process management for processes you rarely perform, those processes aren't that good. So we want to change that, and also it's a marketing way to get people use, of course, our automation system if we provide those processes in that way that we support. On the implementation side, we want to allow a larger subset of BPMN and more notations. So we are currently working on DCR graphs, nets, and a few more. And we want to apply them also as interactive quality management handbooks. Of course, this way we want to expand opportunity to further domains, to further companies and yeah, through practical use by many people. So thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Any question? Okay, I have a question related to the flexibility and the deviance.
Mm-hmm.
When an event or a deviance happens, could the process be modified? That is in real time.
The process model can be modified, but currently not the process instance. What you mean, I think. But why?
Yes, yes. Once the process instance is running,
yeah,
it can be modified.
Yeah. In this case, we don't support it that way, but we support that you change the artifacts, which is what you see when your instance didn't go as expected, or you can always add new tasks you need for this instance. But at least for the medical domain, you at least need to perform those activities that are in your model. So we want to have it that way that people don't delete these single activities. But for many instances, you have a new product or so, you need more activities than you previously had in your model, and you perform that by ad hoc activities that are managed in the same way, in the same Kanban board, in the same documentation as the structured process.
Okay.
So no, we want to have that in the future, but we actually don't need it that much as in typical BPM systems would be the case.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very nice. Okay, another question? Then, thank you. Then we move to the fourth and last presentation of the Industry Forum, which is, the title of this presentation is Enhancing Communication of Complex Services Through Process Modeling Practice, Insights from an Australian Higher Education Institution. And the presenter is Felipe Massana.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you. I'm gonna start. Can you all see the presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon. My name is Felipe Massana, and our team is conformed by Dr. Wasana Bandara and Mrs. Jo Olbat. And we are here to tell you the story of one learning and teaching team from the Queensland University of Technology that follows BPM approach through process modeling practices to enhance the communication of their complex services. As you know, education and academia in general is a very changing environment, and this conference is a good example, you know, because coronavirus is messing around, so the conference had to be moved to an online environment. So universities had to adapt and change all the processes to a more online platforms. And this is the case as well of the science and engineering faculty. Well, the truth is that universities often are changing their teaching and learning processes, even when there are government regulations or internal regulations. So the processes that the learning and teaching team needs to communicate are the processes about the students, the courses, and the units. In this case, the learning and teaching team from the Science and Engineering Faculty of QUT communicate these processes using online platforms. On the one hand, we have the stakeholders, the students. On the other hand, are the academics. To communicate with the academics, they use an intranet called the Digital Workplace. So the goal of this project was to increase the communication effectiveness through BPM models in the digital workplace to better communicate to the academics, all the changes in the processes. The first step towards BPM that this learning and teaching team adopted was grouping all the processes and services in 3 different life cycles. So we have first the student journey that considers the process since the student is applying to the university until the student has to graduate, for example. Then we have the processes about the courses, since the courses are designed until the courses are transformed or even discontinued. And similarly happens with processes, but at the unit of the courses level. So this learning and teaching team was already modeling because they attended workshops with the BPM group of QUT and so on. However, they were making some mistakes. They had the attitude to model, but maybe not the skills or techniques at the time. So in a first step was to increase their skills about modeling, and we provided them with training and also modeling conventions. I'm going to explain now. So in the training, we provided tutorial videos and also workshops. And the workshops also help to engage the participants of this project, the members of the learning and teaching team. And also modeling conventions to simplify the models and modeling in a more consistent manner. We also, we're very cautious about keeping the audience in our minds, because the audience were academics that are mainly non-BPM experts. So we simplified the models and we limited the BPMN notations to the most basic elements. This is an example, this is a screenshot of the digital workplace after they started already modeling at this point. So you can see a description of the process, and then you can see an example of a process model on the website. So that was the idea of the project. At this point, they were already modeling well after the training and support. However, we didn't want this beautiful BPM house we were building there in the learning and teaching team to sync after the project finishes. So our second goal was to set up BPM capabilities. And how did we do that? We provided them with more BPM methods and tools, governance structure, communication, and also an evaluation plan. So I will walk you through the artifacts we developed, but in a very high level description. So the details are in our paper in the ancillary materials. So the SIPO diagrams were borrowed from Six Sigma methods, and they capture the basic information about the processes that are who are the suppliers, the inputs, the steps of the processes, the outcomes, and the customers. And this helped us to get the basic information, and then we could hand over this information to a person to model that. So from the SIPO to the models, and also to the process architecture. And the process architecture was based in the life cycles that they developed before. So we took those life cycles, the student course unit, as a primitive sort of process architecture, and then we formalized it. So that's the process. This is a screenshot of the process architecture that lists all the processes, but also where the processes are located in this life cycle. And also, there were some overlaps between the processes, for example, in the course and the unit level. So the process architecture also reflected those relationships between the processes. And the main stakeholders of the processes that were also reflected, and we used color codes to color the lanes of the models. So all is fitting together, the process models, the process architecture, and information captured in the SIPO. We also added some columns there for change management. So when a process has had a change or needs to be modeled, we put it there in the process architecture. Then we also developed, because the process architecture is a long list of models, we also developed this process architecture landscape to capture it's like a high level or a summarized process architecture with the 3 dimensions that are the 3 life cycles, the processes, and also the stakeholders for each of the process. This was for communication purposes. Then we provided them with a BPM roadmap that consists in 2 parts, the roles and responsibilities. So who is maintaining the process architecture, who is publishing the process model, who is designing, and so on. And also the process of performing business process management within this learning and teaching team. I will explain now. So this process had 4 major milestones. So the update of the process architecture, the production of the process models, a communication and an evaluation plan. So this is a low level model of the this roadmap, but we could identify the process architecture part using the SciPocs as the process identification phase in a normal BPM life cycle. And then from there we moved on to the process discovery phase that was about developing the process models. We have to consider that this team were novice BPM practitioners, and some people were more skillful than others. So we included 2 quality assurance life cycle before the processes get live online, before they are published. The last part of the roadmap considered a communication plan and an evaluation plan. So this is an example of the communication plan. Everything in the website was structured in this life cycle. So within the life cycles, you could find the process models. The digital workplace was the single source of truth for the communication. And there we also included guidelines for the academics to learn about how to read a process model, very short videos, short and sharp videos. And so some tutorials, some videos there, and also some examples of models. Also some videos about what is the project about. About the preliminary evaluation plan, this was conducted with only 4 academics by the end of the project. We encouraged the learning and teaching team to conduct it, an evaluation plan with a larger sample, but we basically wanted to know how the academics were appreciating the navigation in the workplace, understanding of the models, and the value of descriptions and links in the website. So they acknowledged that they were struggling to find information on the digital workplace, which is a very good sign for the project, because this was to enhance this communication, to make it more effective. And they said that they understand the process models. They found them quite straightforward. We keep the models as simple as possible. And also they appreciated the descriptions about the process models and the links to the resources. So overall, we could say that the project was going in the right direction. So the main benefits of this case was that we were achieving the goal. The communication through process models were proved to be effective towards knowledge management goals. We also consider that governance is necessary, but it's not enough for sustained BPM efforts. So you have to be clever when you are deploying a number of artifacts. They need to fit together. Elizabeth mentioned before something about the BPM genes or ADN. So in this case, you could see even the colors of the process architecture, the process models, everything fitting together, the information from the SciPoc to the process architecture. So otherwise, the artifacts are left behind if they don't have that communication between. Also, when you are deploying BPM artifacts to a non-expert audience, you have to consider that you have to go beyond BPM, and the communication plan is a good example for that, because we were engaging not only the team, but also the main customer that were the academics. And finally, this experience was performed in tertiary education, but can be easily replicated into other industries. We use BPM artifacts, basic BPM artifacts, and nothing only exclusive for education. That's all. Thank you. And if you have any question, please raise it, and we will talk tomorrow as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any question? Okay, we have a question. Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I will be trying to be
With-
closer. Thank you very
with
much.
noise.
It's a very nice.
With some noise. With some noise.
Okay. What about now?
Yeah,
Much
better.
better.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, it was a really nice presentation, and it's great to see how the techniques are applied, like to a non-expert audience. I have a question, because the kind of processes that you're modeling or that you're dealing with are very knowledge intensive, at least the students and organizations and the like, and they tend to have a lot of look backs, a lot of cycles. Did you find how did you deal with those cycles when you are using a imperative process modeling notation like BPMN in this case? Like, do you don't show the cycles to look back and forth, or you show it, and how does it decrease or increase the understandability of processes for non-experts?
Okay. The first step was training, making sure that the developers of the process models that were not experts we produce sound BPM models, and we use, for example, Visagi for modeling, and they could also check the soundness of the process model. So we were ensuring that the processes were sound, first of all. And then, if I can go back, can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
So those were 2 quality assurance cycles in our BPM process. So somebody else, after somebody models, somebody else would check if the model is sound and meets the modeling conventions that we developed before as well. So the modeling conventions were like the standard for the models. And then double check.
I'm just wondering whether, like, using a BPMN notation, like, is enforcing a lot of like a very strict flow of activities to do the things at the university, when like knowledge intensive processes tend to be a little bit more flexible.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. So your concern is more about the audience of this process model, like the academics?
No, more like if you like for instance, adaptive case management is being used quite a lot on these sort of areas, similar to what Johannes was presenting earlier. So I was just wondering whether the notation would enforce a lot of kind of fixed flows that do not happen in reality when you have in your domain.
Okay. So we found that consistency was important. If we didn't have like one single modeling notation, then different kind of notation would confuse the audience. Why BPMN is like the more standard BPM BPM approach for modeling, and sticking to the basic elements was simple. However, we didn't restricted it much. I mean, the main purpose of the project was to communicate the processes and the academics able to understand the processes. So if a process model were going to result in a very complicated diagram, then we would discard that. So we also we keep that flexibility by not only having the model, but also description and links to the resources. So in that sense, the BPMN model wouldn't restrict.
I'd like to add to that. I think Hugo's question was about potential cycles of rework. And just to recap, the processes that were modeled were administrative processes. And as part of the business process management capability building that was going on, it was not just that the processes were modeled, but the people in the teaching and learning unit and the service manager here, Joe Albert, one of our co-authors, is here as well, who may be able to add to this. They were also given the skills to rethink about the flow. So it was not just simple modeling, but which is the story of the paper. However, if there was constant rework that was taking place, then the business owners might consider what they need to do to improve the processes. So it's true what you're saying, that the models to some extent does capture this concrete kind of like flow, and there could be rework. But if constant rework was captured and observed in the modeling process, then that was a point for the individuals to reflect and see what could be done in order to address that. So often rework is because the wrong forms are submitted or the wrong information, and that would then be an enhancement either through the, not necessarily through the process model, but through the other channels of communication that they would reach out to the academics or the students to see how could they address those common mistakes or common issues that would cause the rework.
Thank you very much.
I would just like to add something to take into account that the models, yeah, the models are frozen. The models are just pictures you have there. So if the process change, you have to remake the process model and then re-upload the picture on the digital workplace. However, let's consider that this was a first BPM project in the team, and then this could be enhanced from a more live approach.
Can I add something just to say from what we were trying to do as well, is that the three life cycles the cycles that we came up with were quite important in informing all of this, because they dictated the kind of rhythm of what we were doing with the work that needed to be carried out. And we tried to include these points at which we commonly tripped. So these feedback loops were in the models, but the life cycles, the idea of a unit, which is something that occurs very frequently, as opposed to a course, which is a much longer term, it's complex, but it was less frequent, where the feedback loops weren't quite as much, as opposed to a student journey where we had lots and lots of different pieces. And that's why that whole process, that whole architecture became important, because that was kind of like a 3D version of what we were trying to do. So it wasn't, so it didn't fit your, very clear BPM definitions, and it didn't have very tight feedback. It was a little bit looser than that, but it was quite important because we're trying to maintain quality in what we deliver all the time. So that they were kind of some of the drivers. I'm not sure that I'm talking any BPM language because I'm not a BPM expert, but that was that basis of understanding how we stripped out some of those feedback loops to put them in these slightly different forms, if that makes sense. That became an important key to how we were able to go forward with this.
Okay. Any more question? Well, then we finish this session, and then we finish also the industry forum. Thank you all, and thank you for your presentations. Thank you for your attendance. And we continue with the BPM, with the sessions of the afternoon and tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Thanks for your question, Hugo.